It is Newsday Tuesday around the world of women's basketball on the second day of the week. And we're going to start today's Newsday Tuesday with some sad and unfortunate news. Georgia women's basketball coach Tasha Butts died at age 41. I have to tell you, in a WNBA alum group, the stories that are circling around about this woman are just hilarious and amazing and heartfelt. Georgetown women's basketball coach Tasha Butts, 41, died after being diagnosed 2 years ago with advanced stage metastatic breast cancer, Georgetown announced Monday. Georgetown hired Butts last April, almost 2 decades as an assistant coaching, spanning multiple conferences. She spent 4 seasons as an assistant as an associate head coach at Georgia Tech, 8 seasons as an assistant at LSU, 3 seasons as an assistant at UCLA, and a season at Duquesne. Definitely a lifer when it comes to getting women to the next level. As a player, Butts had an impressive career as a guard at Tennessee, playing for the Lady Vols, playing for Hall of Fame coach Pat Summitt. She left Tennessee ranked 4th all-time in games played with 141, won 4 SEC regular season titles, and helped the Lady Vols get to 2 national title games. Butts was a coach who was universally respected and liked at the highest levels of women's basketball. After Butts had stepped away from coaching last month, many women's college programs spanning several conferences and levels participated in Tasha Tough campaign to raise funds for the K.E.L. Cancer Fund, specifically raising money for women who couldn't afford quality health care. We miss you, Tasha. Your friends love you, and the game will not be the same without you. Our prayers go to her family. Now, let's turn our attention to the 2023-2024 basketball season and what people are talking about. They're talking about the race to the Final Four, which will be in Cleveland. And, of course, some of the names being mentioned: South Carolina, Iowa, UConn, UCLA, and you can't forget the defending title champions, LSU Tigers, who got a new locker room, which I'll show you in another post. But let's talk about what's happening in the world of women's basketball today. As we know, Caitlin Clark led her team to a victory in a football stadium last week. And people are talking about, is it uncommon? Will it be uncommon for women to play in front of 52,000 people? Will that become commonplace? I don't know many gyms that can hold 52,000 people that are just in every single college town. So that's probably not going to happen. However, what I do think you will start to see as real estate moguls start to develop larger or even multi-purpose facilities, you will start to see larger Final Fours. At the Dallas Final Four in 2023, my hometown, it sold out. 19,000 plus people in the American Airlines Center, which is where the Dallas Mavericks play. And it was busting at the seams. So many people came from Iowa. Of course, Texas has a great state of women's basketball fans. South Carolinians were there. It was an unbelievable atmosphere. I don't know who can do it better than Dallas. That was the second time Dallas hosted the Final Four. Incidentally, I was actually on the committee that pitched the NCAA to host the Dallas Final Four in 2017. And I was a part of the team that got that done. And then to see it in 2023, and then it'll be back, I think, in a few years back in Dallas. But it's not easy to put on a Final Four at all. And so when you start to look at what the women's game is doing, how much it's growing, then, yeah, you got to start thinking about bigger arenas. And in USA Olympic news, the USA national team has announced their rosters for an upcoming exhibition game at Duke University. Will give fans around the Triangle, that's North Carolina area, the chance to see some of the best in women's basketball. Diana Taurasi, Brittany Griner, Kelsey Plum, Sabrina Ionescu, Alicia Gray, Derica Hamby, and many others will be on the roster for Team USA when they play on November 12th. Now, there will be other exhibition games, and there you'll see some other players infused into the national team as they try to put together the squad that's going to be playing in Paris in 2024. But here are some of the national team members who will be playing against Duke. Kalia Cooper from the Chicago Sky, Alicia Gray, I mentioned, Derica Hamby, Natasha Howard, Ryan Howard, Arika Ogunbowale, Azare Stevens, and of course I mentioned Kelsey Plum and Diana Taurasi. So Wow, that's a squad. That is quite a squad. So we will be watching. That one will be on November 12th, noon on the ACC network. And last but not least, an interesting story came out on ESPN.com. Equity or inequity in social media. This one talks about the inequity of sports tweets. And ESPN did an investigative analysis and found that an overwhelming majority of Power 5 athletic departments tweeted more about men's teams than women's. No shocker there. Even though women's teams outnumber men's teams at almost all schools, the consequences, an inequity that could mean Title IX violations and lawsuits, and perhaps fewer dollars for female athletes via sponsorship and endorsement deals. All right, so basically ESPN looked at the nature, the biases in tweets, did an investigative analysis, and here's what they found. In February 2023, ESPN reviewed more than 3 million posts from the athletic department and team accounts of the then 65 Power 5 schools on the platform formerly known as Twitter to examine how often schools mentioned men's teams versus women's teams. That is right. 55% of athletic department accounts, or 84% of the Power 5, mention men's teams more often than women's teams. No shocker there. Notre Dame was the most biased toward men, while Texas slightly favored women. Now, the data represented just one method of publicity and one snapshot in time. ESPN examined up to 3,200 tweets per account, with most posted within the 5 years ending in February 2023. But the findings, backed by observations from athletes, coaches, Title IX experts, and sponsorship and branding professionals, point to an imbalance in the promotion of men's and women's college sports. According to ESPN, it calculated the percent of the time each main athletic department account mentioned women's teams versus men's team. More on that calculation and the methodology later. But Notre Dame tweeted about women the least, 18.6% of the time. Even those schools that favor women's teams only tweeted about them a little more than 50% of the time. For more on this, you can check out the link in my comments. But this is an interesting finding that we will continue to follow. So like I said, this is a really interesting finding. I'm glad ESPN did this, and they only studied one social media. What have you seen when it comes to the coverage of men's and women's sports, the inequities, the differences? Do you think that there are any differences? And if so, when do you think those will not be the case? We've been talking about some of this stuff forever, seems like forever. And some things, the more they stay the same, the more they stay the same, if you will. Nothing really changes. But what do you think has to change? The top 3 things that have to change in either the amount of coverage that women are getting or the type of coverage that women's sports are getting. What is it that you think needs to change from a media standpoint? We'll see you in the next one.